All right, motherfuckers, this is another opportunity to really to loosen up the tension and the pain, the hurt, and really drop it on the floor of your disgusting apartment. Don't be afraid this time around to drop the salty ones. You were fearful before, you were nervous before, but this is Big Bear over here, and I'm telling you that it's okay. It's completely all right to do it here. As long as there's no fucking whimpering, as long as we don't hear the, just fucking straight for the salty ones. If you need to whimper, go into the corner and do it fucking there so nobody can see this beta behavior. It's time to change. The world isn't getting any better. There's some sort of a tension in the world as a whole, some sort of a menace. Our liberal values are being undermined. And today we're going to be examining these things in an indirect way with random rambling that I'm sure will result in a few people unsubscribing. So welcome, my friends, welcome. And actually today I really have, there's really something special going on. And Mr. Robbins, would you believe it? I mean, we have an amazing guest today. And I really can't believe that she decided to join us. And I mean, I guess she liked my cargo van video. And motherfuckers, it's Meghan Markel, fucking Duchess of Sussex. It's unbelievable. Mr. Robbins, can you believe that she would join us today?
Oh, that's amazing. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, it's fucking insane. It's hardly believable. And of course I will have to just kind of ask a few questions of the Duchess. And the first one would be, now recently you had that fucking kid, the baby. You fucking had the baby, and yet there was a kind of a tension with the monarchy in Canada. Will Queen Elizabeth persevere as the head of state there? Or, do you think, like, how does the baby play into it? Duchess, go ahead, please.
Am I the Duchess?
Yes.
Did I have the baby already?
Did you have the baby? I don't know.
The queen is on track to live to 150. So I'm not seeing that throne. My husband.
Yeah, you're not seeing that throne. It's fucking Grant. What a disappointment. I thought it was the Duchess. Maybe if Grant had a better camera, I would detect this earlier. What a fucking disappointment. It's just fucking Grant. Mr. Robbins, fuck it. The stream was over. I wanted the fucking Duchess here.
Well, let's don't sell Grant short. I'm sure he's got a lot to bring to the table today.
Yes, and of course he does. So Grant has appeared on our Patreon stream. Now, my friends, imagine this stream except like more low energy and shittier. And this is what you can get if you stop being a cheap cunt and give me $1.47. You have access to that goodness. Anyway, that stream. Anyway, it's of course no fault of Mr. Robbins or Grant that these streams are a disaster, but nevertheless, this is
still be shitty.
Yeah. And this is where Grant made his entrance into this universe, and he actually told us a story about how during the 2016 election he has decided to be the edgelord, and in his kind of a liberal hipster environment he voted for Trump, and the horrible ramifications that followed him with passive-aggressive posts on Facebook and even being disowned by members of his family. And so that was an interesting story. Since then, Grant has voted for Democrats, or so he claims. Maybe the whole thing is a big fucking act. He doesn't seem overly repentant for voting for that vile racist that Mr. Robinson I despise. And but here he is. Basically, that was his story. But he's also involved in urban planning and building buildings and doing really some shit. Fancy pants. Grant actually has a family and a child. fucking amazing. You can see his kind of a bourgeois decor there, very respectable. Not kind of the shitter that I live in here. So yeah, that's Grant. Anything else? Anything missing from this introduction?
No, that's well spoken.
Okay.
That sounded sarcastic, but
Yeah.
it wasn't.
All right. So I guess the first thing, speaking of like Duchess of Sussex, I'd like to say that a few streams ago, somebody made a comment of get a lady on the stream. Well, motherfuckers, like easier said than done. But anyway, I would like to have a lady on the stream. And so I do have like 3 female subscribers. However, it would be awkward to host some sort of auditions for joining the stream. Like if we talk on Skype or something, and then I don't necessarily feel the connection as far as the stream goes, that's super awkward, and maybe nobody would apply anyway. So
sounds like a stream in itself.
I'm sorry?
That audition sounds like a stream in itself.
Yeah, right. And I would just like to say that in lieu of that, if you are a lady and you have a YouTube channel who anybody watches, and I mean like a few hundred people, and you would like to join the stream, please let me know. I can just then review your channel. Or if you know a lady who has a small YouTube channel who you think might be interested in doing this stream, you can refer me to them, and I'm fine with being ghosted. It is a big fucking sausage fest. YouTube is, and especially these types of channels. And it would be really nice to have a lady, but like I don't have a social life of any kind. Like I can't invite any male to be a part of the stream hardly. So yeah, so basically that's the situation. We've tried to make the stream accessible to people, to ladies. Like we haven't talked about math at all. And yeah, I mean, Mr. Robbins, any ideas about how to actually procure a female guest or a co-host for the stream?
No, I think the shout outs are pretty, that's about as far as we can do, or far as we can go. I mean, expanding the demographic makes sense. I mean, everybody knows you love the blacks and you love the Jews.
Yeah.
It's not frequently mentioned, but we love the gays and we love the women.
Well, okay, Mr. Robbins. Are you telling us that you're bisexual?
Well,
That's the revelation here.
No, it's a general love for everyone.
Well, it's just an odd kind of 2 demographics to mention. We love the gays, we love the, Oh, anyway, Mr. Robbins, I guess this is something when you feel secure with opening up about this stuff, we will explore it further. So I guess what I'll begin with is Owen Benjamin. I've done a video about Big Bear, and as I was reflecting on Big Bear, I've kind of come to a kind of a realization that, like, if before I started this YouTube channel, before I really understood or explored deep YouTube at all, if somebody were to tell me, Ivan, there are kind of cults forming around YouTube channel. Like there's a cult and a total devotion to a YouTube personality, I would have thought, what the fuck are you talking about? And now, having seen Big Bear, I've really kind of, upon reflecting upon it, I've realized that I've really hit the bottom of the gutter when it comes to this stuff. Because you have Peterson with a devotional cult that's not a real cult. Then you have Stefan Molyneux that has been like hiding his cult. I don't know what's going on with defooing right now. He has been kind of stealth hiding it. And then you have Benjamin Owens, and the combination of factors there is truly bizarre. Because, like, you look at that guy and you think, this guy is a fucking lunatic. Like you think like this guy's just a rambling dumpster fire, and I just want to hang around here and watch him burn out. But the reality of it is that there are people out there, the bears, who watch Benjamin, fucking, what is his name? Owen Benjamin, right?
Yeah, Owen Benjamin.
Yeah, I keep confusing it. Who watch Owen Benjamin, and his kind of a style of sitting there by the fire, playing a little piano, rambling and drinking. It's almost like he becomes like a kind of a kid you want to hang out with. And then a kind of a vortex begins with his conspiracy theories, where now you have to commit that the earth is flat. Now you have to commit to the fact that Steven Spielberg is a part of a pedophile conspiracy. Now it's like there was no journey to the moon, and like the more things you leap into, like in a cult, it like at first is like, well, the Pope is a pedophile Jew, okay, a crypto Jew, and they're like, oh, okay, and then like the next one, it's like Mother Teresa is transgender. You're like, okay, and then the next thing, I'm Jesus, like I'm Jesus, and it's like now that you have committed to these, you further and further commit yourself to this circular reality. And then the constant banning of people, of bears, actually kind of works in his favor, because it again creates a sense of exclusivity. It's like, you know, when like you're with a group of kids, like guys, and there's a leader, and he like tells the guys to beat somebody up or something, and you're like, it's not me. Like, I'm still in this group, I'm still in this in-group, I know how to behave with the big bear. And it's just amazing to see this kind of unraveling in this strange kind of environment, in the strange YouTube environment. Like, there are people who change their names, usernames, specifically for Big Bear. And it seems like a trivial thing to do. However, it's just basically you're like creating an identity for this one man. You're creating an identity, an online identity, to gain his approval, and it's fucking not trivial at all. So of all, like, as I was reflecting, because when I went into it, I really didn't care about him. I just like ran out of people to criticize. I did Sargon, I did Peterson a bunch of times when I was depressed and lazy, and it was just the easiest thing to do. I did Stefan, and then I fucking decided to check out this, fucking Benjamin Owen, whatever, Owen Benjamin. And as I have leaped into there, I've realized that things are really fucked over there. Things are seriously fucked, and this is, in a sense, fascinating.
Yeah, I guess that's part of my fascination with it too, is to see how, to see his spiral, like you say, the cult, the cultishness of it, where that comes from, you know, why people gravitate to this guy who's, you know, simply a comic and arguably not that great a comic. It's like, what's he providing them that's such a draw? I don't really get it, but it's fascinating to see. And I'm fascinated really to see where this whole thing with him leads. And to have been told 3 or 4 months ago that this would be like something that would really, really draw me in on YouTube. I would hate to admit it, but it really has. Just seeing that descent and just trying to understand what's going on there has been pretty fascinating.
Do you think that he's going to unravel, or this is sustainable?
I don't know. I mean, like I say, I'm keeping up on this far more than I ever should. But he claimed the other day that he's going to back off on those White Claws, which is what he drinks every day. And as he gets progressively drunker, he rambles and you know, ramps up the rhetoric on the Jews and the blacks and the gays and everything. So I don't know if these guys from that that live stream, how much that's kind of affected him, because they really like sick the dogs on him. And I don't know if he's kind of, if that in any way has caused him to reconsider what he's doing and maybe tone things down a bit or not. I'm not sure where he's going, but I would think, you know, that he's claiming he's at least going to tone down on getting drunk during those streams is probably a step in the right direction for him.
Yeah. Have you been following this dumpster fire, Grant?
Yeah. he only came on my radar maybe in the last 6 months post-election. He has an authoritarian personality, and it makes me uncomfortable. Speaking, Mr. Robbins, of him being, he probably has a drinking problem. He reminds me of the type of guy who I have almost gotten beaten up by at bars because I have like poorly regulated facial expressions, and I'll just like do one eye roll. This has happened to me before I sort of got it under control. And he's the type of guy, his adrenal glands are burnt out. He's just fired up all the time. I think it's going to end with him actually just doing something violent in some petty way, but some legally compromising way, because he's so on edge all the time. It makes me uncomfortable. And then when you combine that with this musical shtick, I'm a musician, and like it's really, speaking of doing violence to something, I mean,
yeah,
he shouldn't. The way he appropriates this jangly Ben Folds music for drunken narcissistic spleen letting, it's really grotesque. And yeah, I wish him the best.
Yeah.
Well, the two things that like are the most disgusting with him is his like whole thing with Martin Luther King. Like where he imitates him, but he doesn't just imitate him. He like imitates his last kind of speech, his last famous. I don't know which.
I have a dream.
No, not well. He does that, but there was one where he says, I have seen the top of the mountain, and I might not get there." Basically, talking, kind of prophesizing that he's going to be assassinated, and if there is something that like would make me into a Christian, it would be that kind of a speech of his, or like that statement, because it was like just beautiful and prophetic about his own death. And for this piece of shit fucking Owen, this fucking asshole, to imitate that of all things is just so profane and disgusting. And he also did some sort of a jingle with like Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. Some sort of a yeah, so yeah, he's just a disgusting scum in his fucking pond, and I wish eventually it would get drained, but it's like no other channel that I've ever seen. It is pretty bizarre. Now, one of the things of course Big Bear pays attention to a lot is height. And so my friends, would you dare reveal your heights?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this because we've met. You're 6'4", I'm 5'7".
Yeah.
And speaking of grotesque, if we're going to be talking about dating later, the idea of me giving dating advice there is kind of funny to someone who's...
Oh, no, I mean, there are a lot of things working against my height. How tall are you against my fucking ability to interact and... engage in sexual congress with the opposite sex? Mr. Robbins, what is your height?
Well, I'm the tweener of the group, 5'11" ¾
Yeah, 3/4. Talk about some insecurity, Mr. Robbins.
Well, exactly.
You're like that meme that 6 feet and then 5'11" is like way.
I feel like the last time I was officially measured, I thought it was going to
officially
go.
Measured.
I thought that it was going to go
like you paid to be measured at like the state fair.
5'11.5". Well, at the doctor's office. So I thought, well, if that's what I measured at again, what do I do with that? Do I round it up, round it down, or be as precise as possible? And the last time, who knows? Maybe the scale or the stick was off a little bit, but yeah, that's what it came up: 5'11 3/4.
Well, Big Bear would be very reluctant to be friends with you guys. You really would have to prove that you would have the moral kind of fortitude of a 6-footer, as he says it. I mean, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, when I first heard it, I thought he was joking. Like, it's so dumb that it never even occurred to me that something like that is possible. Like, it just never fucking occurred to me. Like, anyway, it wouldn't, would it? Yeah.
Privilege.
It was just something utterly bizarre. But did you guys ever experience any hangups about your height? I mean, you guys are not that. Your guys aren't short, but any kind of envy or anything like that.
No, I've never really. I mean, not being short, I've never really understood, the short guy hang up, but I guess it exists. I mean, you look in the comic books from the old days, you could buy those lifts for your shoes that were, somehow supposed to turn you, from the beta male into the Chad or something. So I don't know. I guess guys have hang-ups, but personally, it's never affected me.
Okay, and Grant.
I do think I keep the flame alive of an actually multi-generational Napoleon complex. I'm the same height as my dad, who was a drill sergeant and like owned a small business, and was like super, it was like super, well, alpha, I guess, in his demeanor. And I guess I myself, I do not, I'm not calling myself super alpha. Oh my God. But I think there's compensations going on. Like I was the lead singer in a rock band, like a really like big sounding band.
Yeah.
So yes. And there's a wistful, feeling when, I mean, there really is like 20% of women would never date you.
I don't know. I don't know what percentage.
It is what it is.
But yeah, I would say that like in the case of my life, like I've barely had interactions with women in my life. Like I'm the ultimate incel. But on the other hand, like with but on the other hand, with all of my like mental fuck ups, I'm glad that I'm tall in that sense, because it's like at least I don't have to worry about that. And also being like, if I was short and bald, I'd probably be like dead by now. Like it's just some sort of like a pointless kind of an attribute that like I can walk around and hardly ever do I have to look up at anybody. Like I always kind of look down on everyone. And when I see somebody like today at the Walgreens, somebody who's taller than me, it's like an event that makes me uncomfortable. So it's like at least I can cruise through life in that sense. And yeah, I like being tall, although I will die earlier than you guys. Tall people die younger, and I can die for a variety of reasons, but you just basically have more cells and more potentialities for cancer. You hardly ever see like super old people who are tall. So every inch kills.
You're proportionate, and I think you're just at the border of anyone taller than you is a freak. Like,
yeah.
like there was a 7-foot tall waiter at a restaurant that we went to on Friday, and we took our toddler, and then we had to leave and take the food to go because she was running too much. But seeing her next to someone who was actually like 7 times taller than her, it's pretty trippy.
Yeah, I mean, even looking at Owen with his, he did have a relationship with Christina Ricci. And looking at him with her and
his dad.
Yeah.
I did too.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Wednesday Addams when I was a kid. Yeah, one of my first like media crushes.
Oh, Buffalo 66. She looked great.
Well, guys, you Big Bear has been there, and you haven't. But anyway, I guess that's might be enough about Big Bear. I don't know what else to say. The last thing I'll say is that like I like ethnic humor, and I like kind of crude, over the top humor. And so like when he sings these kind of anti-Semitic songs, I do find them somewhat funny. Or when he calls Jordan Peterson queer, it's kind of funny. But I was thinking about it, like usually these types of songs you'd hear in like South Park, or like Sarah Silverman would do it, or like on Howard Stern show. Except in this case, like he means it.
Yeah. It's there's no, I've there's it's the type of thing that can bring people together by acknowledging, interesting and quirky differences. And it can be like actually educational to, if there's a joke that contains like an actual good observation about, Jewish culture in whatever, Brooklyn or something. But he's just saying stuff. It's really kind of, that's what I mean by the violence being just under the surface with him in this unnerving way.
Yeah.
He's like, they're sneaky and they're greedy.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, good one.
Right. There is something in that. It's like, it's just strange that he kind of appropriated this humor and satire that's almost Jewish, or at least like modern. And normally, like that type of a song, you would, like Borat would like sing kind of this song, throw a Jew down a well. And I mean, Owen is almost there. So it's just interesting, just kind of over the top humor that if you were to laugh at it, you would laugh at it because it's absurd and you think that the person was just saying kind of this kind of over the top shit for laughs. But in his case, he's using the same style, the same satirical style of this crude kind of ethnic humor, except he means it. Well, anyway, enough with Big Bear. I will introduce like a new part of my channel where instead of bears, everybody's going to be a black Canadian squirrel. And at first, everybody's going to be like change their name to Black Canadian Squirrel to please me. And then I will squirify you, how he bearifies you when he likes your bear nickname. And eventually, first you will have an individual black squirrel nickname like Spunky Black Canadian Squirrel. And then the next level would be just replacing it with a number, like in the Khmer Rouge, where they try to destroy your personality. So you would just be like Black Canadian Squirrel number 48 or something. And then after that, everybody will just have to change their names to Black Canadian Squirrel and just form this one unified whole. Kind of like you would jump into my super chat and you would just be another Black Canadian Squirrel, just saying random shit with the other ones, kind of total synchronicity, total oneness with the big squirrel, the Papa Squirrel. I don't know how I would make money that way if everybody's just named Black Squirrel, but there's something to that.
I'm going to hang back and see what happens to the first couple dozen Black Canadian Squirrels. That's all right.
Well, I'm hoping to be shot straight to the top like Paddington Bear.
I'm
looking for a high rank.
Yeah. Well, you see, Mr. Robbins, you don't understand the whole schema. You're just going to be a Black Canadian Squirrel eventually. Just going to fulfill your role.
Yeah, I understand that over time, our individual identity would be diminished, but at least in the beginning, we would have a sense of it.
Yeah. All right. And the other thing I'd like to talk about is Liam Neeson. Now, Liam Neeson has been a great Black History Month because we found out that literally every office holder in the state of Virginia has partaken in the great blackface humor of the times. There's just the thing going around, and then you pretend that you were dressed as Michael Jackson. Motherfucker, not even in the 1980s was Michael that black. This is obscene, this lie. So these black faces and then just fucking blackface lies have consumed this. And in leaps Liam Neeson with the revelation that for about a week he was about to fucking kick your ass. Really kind of was out on the hunt. His kind of a week of being the racial rape avenger, when he came back and realized that his girlfriend was raped, and she informed him that the offender was black. And then he was filled with so much rage that he started walking around and looking for any black man for some reason, and he was going to pounce. He was ready to pounce. So I'm fine with people exposing dark aspects of their character. People can make their own decisions whether to patronize his movies or not. I think that from a point of view of being an actor, it is just once again proof that they're idiots. Like, why the fuck would you say something like that? It's just so fucking dumb to just, kind of share that story. But the reason I bring this up is because I actually think that there's a good possibility that the whole story is a crock of shit. And here's why. Basically, like, almost wanted to make a video about this, but I didn't, because I didn't want to do the research. And the research was concerning where exactly was he living 30 years ago when this happened. Because the articles haven't mentioned it, and the original recording hasn't mentioned it, and he did kind of move around a lot throughout his life. However, his home kind of turf of Northern Ireland, I believe it's today 96% white or 98% white. And of course, the remainder aren't all black people, and there are going to be a lot of Indians and whatever, Pakistanis, whoever. And so the idea that if he lived in the United Kingdom, they're also, like, the black population today isn't that big. I think it's around like 2% of the population. I mean, there would be more in London, etc. But it's, it doesn't have some kind of a huge burgeoning, like, black population, and especially like 30 years ago. And so was there so, like, if you live in an area where there are hardly any black people, and your girlfriend reports that she was raped by a black man, wouldn't you just look for the fucking guy because there are just 10 black guys there? You know what I mean? Like, if you're so passionate that he literally, like, paced around the streets of paced around the streets for a week, wouldn't he be looking for the guy, as opposed to, like, how he said random black bastard or whatever? I mean, it's just ludicrous. And it just doesn't make sense. Like, if I imagine, like, rage over having my non-existent girlfriend being raped, it seems like it, even though potentially human nature being what it is, stereotypes might spring up, whatever. I mean, you have to suppress that kind of tribal thinking, but don't you just want to, like, punish that specific guy? Like, it's just such a specific offense. And even, like, the lynch mobs in the South, which obviously, they're hideous and they're monstrous, and they would, whatever, commit horrible crime, go after people who, like, allegedly whistled on a white woman or whatever, shit like that. But even they, like, were looking most of the time, from what I understand, for the perpetrator. Again, I in no way, like, approve of them, but, like, Liam Neeson, in a sense, like, in his mind at least, went beyond that. And it psychologically doesn't make sense, and it, like, fucking practically doesn't make sense if you live in a fucking area where there are hardly any black people. Mr. Robbins, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm trying to parallel that to something like getting dumped by a woman. It's like, reasonably, if you felt you were wrong, it would seem justified to have animosity toward that woman, but to extend that to women in general doesn't make much sense. So, sort of seems like maybe a similar thing.
Well, no, I mean, here the psychology, like, with the women, it actually kind of, there is an established pattern of this happening, of, like, being bitter toward all women. And it's usually because, like, you had a separation, and then you can't find anyone else, and so you're just stuck in the sexless limbo, and you just remember the bitterness and the hurt that you've experienced because of the lady. And so, like, that certainly happens. But what Liam Neeson described, it just seems to be less realistic. Like, you could say, if you have that predisposition, I fucking hate black people, but I want to find that particular motherfucker. Like, I'm pacing around the streets, it just seems like a fucking waste of time, just pacing around the street looking for a random black guy, not hunting for the guy. Like, it's just, even if you're filled with hatred, it just doesn't make sense. Grant, am I connecting any dots here, or
Sure.
do you find the story plausible?
I find it plausible in terms of human nature. I'm doing Sam Harris's meditation course right now. It's just an app, but it's actually a pretty fleshed out kind of course in that app. And something he talks about is so I can understand, and it would be inevitable for him to feel all of that. But Sam Harris points out that it takes a choice and an effort to relive that emotion again and again. Just the way consciousness works it's like a stream where a new thing comes down and you're distracted. And so he was, if true, and people do that, so I could believe it. He's choosing to put himself in that limbo again and again, which then made me think about, which is unfortunate, but it then made me think about how dementing it must be to be what he is, an action actor. Like, talk about having a chip on your shoulder. Like, you've seen what's happened to Steven Seagal, where like he's had this desire he needs to actually go out and be a vigilante. He needs to be a sheriff and run over chain link fences in a tank. And like, I really do. It's really kind of crazy to me. Like, we should be talking about, writers and directors, but I think we're all, like, even me, like, we can't really even appreciate how bizarre it is that we project these experiences that we see actors doing in movies onto the person. But the person is just a guy who like goes to steakhouses in Palm Desert and like gets a facial, twice a week, and it eats them up. That then they're shot in rain, which is probably fake warm rain, and a perfect lighting, and they're looking all miserable and grizzled, and there's this weird hologram to their whole existence that they need to close the gap on.
Let's say you were dating a girl and she says that she was raped by a Russian, and so now you're kind of filled with rage and you hate Russians, but don't you still want to like find the Russian as opposed to like hanging around for a vodka store waiting for a random Russian? Doesn't that make no fucking sense? Don't you want to find the Russian because your rage is directed at the person and that trumps any kind of prejudice you might have, generally speaking? I mean,
Sure.
it just kind of from a point of view of rage.
But he probably didn't know. He didn't know who the person was, so then his brain had to go to the next category, and it was driving him crazy, obviously.
Yeah.
I didn't hear a video of him. I read the quote and everything, but I didn't hear the tone in which he said it, because it is a pretty wild thing to talk about.
Yeah, so basically, like, I don't know if it's false or not, but I will just say that if there is any evidence whatsoever, like Liam Neeson says, like these stories, like bullshits, then yeah, in that case, if I hear one evidence of that, and I don't care about Liam Neeson, I would kind of characterize this as bullshit. You could say, like, why would he lie about something like that? Well, he was talking with a lady journalist, and there are certain men who like to, and not just men, but often they're men who like to come up with bullshit stories to get somebody's attention, not necessarily even for sex, but just for attention. And those stories don't necessarily have to even present them in a positive light. But it's just something to really capture the attention and distinguish yourself. And I think they were having this boring press junket, and I saw that lady speak, and she's quite cute and attractive. And so he maybe wanted to wow her with this story of him as this fucking shitty taxi driver, fucking rape avenger. The other bullshit part of that story is like, he comes home and he's like, she's like, he's like, do you know who raped you? And she's like, no, he was a stranger. And then he's like, well, what race was he? And it's like, wouldn't that just fucking come up right away? As long as you're like talking about it, wouldn't you just say, I've been raped by a black guy or whoever, by a stranger? Anyway, stranger on stranger rapes are also relatively rare. I mean, of course, they do happen. So in any case, yeah, I mean, I do think that there is possibilities that the story is bullshit. But I guess you guys aren't on board with that. So all right. So Mr. Robbins, do you have that story propped up?
Oh yeah, the story from your subscriber.
Yes.
Oh shoot, I had to restart the computer.
Okay, so let's
Send it my. Can you send it my way again, real quick?
well, it should be in your Facebook messages. You just have to open your Facebook.
Yeah.
Fucking Boomer Robbins. Fucking Boomer Robbins.
Well, when I had it pulled up in a Word document, and then when I had to reset the computer to get this stream going,
Word document. You betray yourself as a boomer with the Word document.
well, actually, on a skate, it's like a WordPad document. I would never.
I had it sketched out on Microsoft Paint.
Are you a boomer? A 1964 cutoff?
No.
No way. I've seen it. Okay.
I'm
boomer is just like internet slang for like a.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that one out. Maybe you could give us a little rundown on that while I'm trying to find this document.
It's just an older person who's like inept in technology. So like one time Sargon like started a stream attacking Mr. Medicare, and he forgot to turn the sound on for 20 minutes, and he disabled the chat because fans of Medicare would attack him, and so he was proclaimed to be a boomer.
Or Jordan Peterson left his stream on, and his wife came in the room, and they were talking, and nothing juicy, just as intense with her in a way.
Huh, that's interesting.
Well, it's she's talking about something in the press that happened, and he's like, sons of bitches. Sort of that.
Okay, I've got it here when you're ready.
All right, Mr. Robbins has retrieved his file.
Yeah, so this comes from one of your subscribers?
Yes, and this is another segment we're going to have on our Poorly Watched stream where we examine subscriber stories and give our ethical judgment, or render our judgment on account of that story. So today's story is actually somewhat similar with what Grant was going to, a story of polarization, a kind of fathers and sons. Well, fuck it, it's a Russian novel, but something along those lines, except without fathers and sons, but other siblings. Mr. Robbins, let's get it started.
All right, here goes. My younger brother has been transformed from a general Bernie Sanders supporter to a light right Jordan Peterson devotee, a changeover that has caused a falling out between us. I first noticed the change in him when he started complaining about SJWs and how they were policing people's thoughts or something like that on college campuses. I thought his complaint about SJWs and their Antifa army was pretty stupid in comparison to the monstrous GOP, a cabal who are, as Noam Chomsky describes, the most dangerous organization on earth. I'm more the type of progressive whose concern is about class and is wary of identity politics. I am no fan of the retarded SJW type, but I regard them as a pretty minor problem versus the climate change denying fascists who promote ethno-states governed by the alpha lobsters. My brother described how these menace to society SJWs were committed to criminalize the misuse of pronouns out of some kind of postmodern neo-Marxist or Marxism or something like that. Postmodern neo-Marxist anti-imperialists who hate Western civilization. Yikes. What the fuck do these stupid-ass terms mean, I ask, and his response led to my introduction to the Alpha Lobster and the fuckface Jordan Peterson. Anyhow, my brother was soon singing the praises for jackwagons who platformed Peterson gaping assholes like the phony Dave Rubin and pseudo-intellectual Ben Shapiro. Well, it didn't take long for me to really push back. I tried to explain how Peterson was impersonating Canada's pronoun use law in order to promote himself. In addition, I tried to convey the absurdity of a diet composed only of meat, salt, and water. I tried to get him to see that it was a logistical impossibility for a human being to be incapable of sleep for 25 days because he drank some apple cider. Quite frankly, if anyone were to make such a claim, you cannot take him seriously. And a PhD intellectual was full of shit if he claimed that a lobster jacked up on antidepressants was proof that hierarchy was natural within humans. I tried to get my brother to see this, but to no avail. His Facebook posts proclaimed the 7 rules, and he glowed about seeing a Peterson talk in person. The tension between us intensified and eventually erupted during the Judge Kavanaugh hearings. At this time, my brother still promoted leftist values, claiming to hate unfettered capitalism, racism, and bigotry, and sexism. And yet, in spite of what he claimed to back, he was pro-Kavanaugh. He was pro-Kavanaugh because he was so disgusted at the Democrats, who he said were nothing but a pack of SJWs and controlled by the postmodern Marxist or something like that. Black Lives Matter was a terrorist group. There was no such thing as institutional racism. Minorities were held down by their dependence on government subsidies, and all they had to do was get married and step up, and they'd achieve the American dream. The real victims were the white men who had become public enemy. I assume he meant public enemy number 1. I had heard enough. I had been drinking that night, and we'd clashed about Kavanaugh, and I lost it. I didn't hold back and told him that I had zero respect for his claims and conclusions. I think I told him he was a brainwashed sucker, cucked by a bunch of fucking idiots and snake oil salesmen. I was out of line to confront him so aggressively, yet I still believe that what I said was the truth. We screamed at each other for a while, and the next day I apologized for being an asshole, though it must be said that he'd been trolling me, provoking me, mocking my views and values the whole time. However, I was the first to lose control and go nuclear. We kind of made up, agreed to never talk politics anymore. Nevertheless, things had changed between us. Bottom line, I cannot respect Peterson and his ilk and regard him as stupid, absurd, and dangerous. Am I on a colossal ego trip? Am I justified in distancing myself from him? How do you reconcile with someone who has swallowed the red pills and has become bewitched by the Peterson spell?
Okay, so I think the moral of that story is that you don't want to be drinking during the Kavanaugh hearings. That's when that was the catalyst for the disaster. Now, Grant, you had you wanted to make America great again, but I guess some of your acquaintances and close ones didn't, and you were kind of involved in a similar situation. How do you judge this subscriber story? What are your thoughts and reflections? Guides for advice? Maybe you're the wrong person to ask because you still don't talk to many people. But what is your well, not because you don't want to talk to them. Well, what are your judgments?
You can only work on yourself. I know it's a term Peterson uses. It wouldn't be surprising. Peterson himself is somebody with whom I've also become disillusioned. It was at first it was always like I've heard these things, like I've read about like second wave like feminist era like Iron John and these books about like masculine archetypes, king, warrior, magician, lover, and I actually and it was nice to see Peterson kind of nodding to that in the public sphere, and and then then I didn't think his work was that good, and then he started only eating meat, and it was like, geez, and then he became shamelessly right wing versus a centrist. But so that could happen to the brother as well, because I also was into I was more or less fine with Bernie Sanders, and you can only so. I say that because this is a term Jordan Peterson uses, but I do think it's a very good term. Ideological possession. I think that it is to become ideologically possessed is a real thing. It's not about politics. It's more about
identity.
It's about ego, but not maybe in the way he means it. It's like when somebody is really asserting their identity as a gutter punk. And it just becomes exhausting. It's like, I want to meet you. I want to meet the real you. And it's especially, there's a real sacred potential to the relationship between siblings. You know them your whole life, but you don't even know your parents as long. And it should just be completely dwarfed by this, the scale of the disagreement, which it sounds like he kind of kept it contained. Emotionally, he was, but he said, I don't respect your conclusions and claims, which is, if that's how he actually was talking while drunk, that's not bad. So right. I think it's fine. They seem to be moving on. But I just think some of the language he used was a little, when he's like, I'm the type of progressive who, there's no need to even use those sentences in life. You'd be surprised at how involved you can be, like, as a job in politics and be engaged. And no one ever says, what kind of progressive are you? I mean, you don't need to label yourself like that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, he does have leftist beliefs, and he wants to distinguish from SJW's Mr. Robbins. Mr. Robbins. Now, you kind of not one for a lot of friction. Seems to be kind of you're conflict averse. It seems like. However, you do have like many people in the Midwest, parents who kind of, I hope you don't mind me saying it, who watch Fox News all the time, or like it's not a huge kind of a revelation, I hope. And you had some friction, but nothing dramatic. What is your take on this?
Well, there actually was, within a year or two ago, one of the more dramatic episodes that had occurred in my life in a long time, and it came up over politics. And I just think the thing that I've had to try to learn to understand is that, and I don't know where it comes from, I guess by temperament, that people feel more comfortable seeing the world differently. A more conservative politics or a more liberal politics may make more sense to you than it does someone else, and trying to persuade them that they shouldn't think that way really kind of disrupts their worldview. And it's or more than just a worldview, just the way that they make sense of the world. And the same thing, I think, happens a lot with religion, trying to convince a Christian that his religion is stupid compared to another religion or no religion. I just think my experience has been that that's not a fight worth fighting. And especially with people you're close to, it sucks because, once that rift occurs, a lot of times there's no going back. And what used to be, might have been a fairly smooth relationship in which people didn't have to have their guard up, suddenly becomes something much different. And that sucks, but it's something you've got to deal with. I've learned that in the particular instance I'm talking about, all you can do is really try to focus on the things that you still have in common.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that the primary issue here is one of synchronization. Like, I have a friend who hasn't dated for a long time, and then he started dating. And he told me, like, the more time I spend with a lady, with a woman, the more sexist I become. He said, I wasn't sexist before, but I am now. So I don't condone these sentiments. I just present this as a case of lack of synchronization when you're with a person all the time, and now you have to treat them in a sense like the other. Like you can't he can't communicate with her directly like he can with the dude, I guess, and he intended to begin with. So I'm not saying that you should become sexist or that I condone it. I'm just presenting it as a case of like a case of alienation where there is no synchronicity. Like in a sense, we want synchronicity with other people. On the other hand, like periodically we begin like with office workers, like they say something about politics you don't agree with. You're not going to confront them because you don't want pointless drama at the office because you don't care about them. You don't care about that office worker and sorting out relations, which is a Russian word expression, like выяснять отношения, like it implies drama, that expression. You're gonna fucking talk shit and try to kind of express your real opinions to sort out relations. Well, you don't fucking want to do it. However, what happens when you have a brother or sibling or whoever with an identity, like a political identity or whatever, that you can't confront, you can't attempt for synchronicity or agreement. You can either choose conflict or you can choose patronizing them and kind of not talking about them and not sharing your real opinions potentially. And that create either way, not talking about it or patronizing them, it creates distance. And now in one sense, you're interacting now with your sibling like you do with an office worker, with somebody you don't give a shit about. And that's unfortunate, but I think that's kind of one of the inevitable evils of life that you have to do if there is such a chasm. Like all of my family, unfortunately, more or less supports Putin, or if they don't support Putin, they kind of support or agree with many facets of the reality that he promotes. And in some ways, it becomes profoundly obnoxious because I have respect for these people and their intellect. On the other hand, I can't. This narrative is so ridiculous. Like recently, there's been like a Russian spy, killed in United Kingdom, and basically, a lot of my family seems to believe, even though they don't explicitly go that far, that it was a Western conspiracy to kill him, to make Russia look bad. Even though, like that case, hardly anybody gives a shit about it, and it hasn't really done anything new aside from killing that spy. And Russian reputation is already low. But anyway, it's kind of what I view as a ridiculous conspiracy theory. But it's once promoted by the state, and when I would argue with them about it, I would just become nastier and more aggressive and kind of sarcastic, and it was just pointless. On the other hand, it is annoying because I have to patronize them or distance from it. I have to now manage them in the same way that my friend now has to manage his girlfriend as the other as a woman, in his sexist view, versus just interacting as human beings. And patronizing is something we all have to do with everybody, but sometimes levels of patronizing, when they go up with a close one or distancing, that's fucked up. But I do think that for the sake of fucking balance and for the sake of peace, you have to patronize your relatives. You have to distance yourselves from them in a way, and you have to kind of view them as the other and not try to apply necessarily arguments that would work for you unless you both can enjoy the process.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head. And I think a lot of times what happens, whether it's, between parents and children, maybe the parents, we're very religious, and the child, grows up and tends to go in another direction, or it's a political thing. Everybody knows that's what's being happened. Those seeds of alienation are being sown there. And a lot of times those blow-ups, I think, are as much a part of trying to keep that person within your sphere. It's like, I can change your way of thinking so that, this thing doesn't come between us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always necessarily a matter of pure ego, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now we're going to move on to kind of a little segment. Now, Mr. Robbins, do you know what people tend to ask me the most? Like, what's the biggest question that surfaces?
Do you have a girlfriend?
How can I be like Dad? How can
Oh.
I be more like Dad? How can I live with my mother in my 30s and drive fucking old people's urine for $10 an hour? How can I make this happen? Well, today we're gonna help you out, my friends, and you can get closer to me, closer to Big Bear, closer to Dad. And I'm gonna show you some items which I will call Dad's Essentials. These are things I use on a daily basis. This segment is horrible and pointless, and if you have nothing to say, no need to really.
I see what you're doing, smart, becoming a lifestyle brand.
Yeah, exactly.
Jake Paul.
Exactly. These are the things that could help any person, any man, but any lady as well. These are useful things that I use, that are essentials of my life. So the first one is going to be my chain wallet. Mr. Robbins, do you have a chain wallet?
No, I don't.
Why not?
I've just gone with the regular old trifold, but I've looked at them in Spencer's and they've attracted my attention. I've just never made that leap.
Well, motherfucker, guess how many times a young honey would come over me, would pull a little bit on the chain and say, "Hey, big boy, how much you got in there?" And I'm like, $10 to $15. It happens all the time, fucking with this chain wallet. Now, Grant, you are, as you yourself have said many times, you have impeccable hipster pedigree. You went to hipster schools. You were born in a hipster location. I just don't want to reveal your information in case. But
Seattle.
would this chain wallet appeal to you?
That is funny you ask, because to be honest, I don't know where it came from, but cultured into me that's off limits.
Okay.
I would never use a chain wallet.
Yeah, I suspected this. I suspected this from this bougie person. Well, of course, the plus of the chain wallet is that it's hard to lose because it has a chain attached. You can hang your wallet by the chain.
Use the chain in a fight. Is that part of the whole badassery of it?
Yeah, and you can choke somebody with it. And of course, the chain wallet will help you to not have your wallet snatched by untrustworthy minorities. And my friends, of course, I'm talking about Italians here. You don't want fucking Luigi to run away with your MasterCard, motherfucker. He's gonna pull on your belt, and it's gonna be awkward, and then the whole thing is gonna be over. It's very convenient, and you'll never lose your fucking wallet, because it's in the same pocket, Mr. Robbins, okay?
Okay. Now, is this just a plain chain wallet? Now, when I go to Spencer's, I see different designs, like you may have a band like AC/DC or comic book characters. Is yours just plain?
Yeah. Yeah, somebody wrote that chain wallets are for cool kids. Exactly. This is just a plain Dickies chain wallet.
Okay.
A brand that I like and respect. Well, anyway,
Dickies is respectable work clothes.
I'm sorry?
Dickies is respectable work clothes.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. So the next thing is this. Goddamn with this flashlight. So the next thing is this thing. It's a string, whatever it's called, like for ID cards, but this is like stronger for your keys. Expandable keychain, whatever. What is this called, Mr. Robbins? I'm not a native speaker.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got one too. I keep my ID badges on it. It's like a retractable string.
Yeah, but this is like industrial grade. This is like much heavier. It holds keys. So yeah, and now Grant, would this kind of an accessory fit a hipster lifestyle?
I'm starting to get a picture of your lifestyle from these last two items there.
Yeah.
Could you also use that to choke someone?
And it's not that strong. But the nice thing about it is that when you're sitting in the car, you can keep it extended. But basically,
that's good because it has frankly a daintiness to it that's acceptable.
Okay, all right, nice. Yeah, it's a little bit there. Yeah, I mean, I love it because
you
never forget your keys in the wallet, and it's part of my kind of mental disability lifestyle. It's like everything that I carry has to be tied to my pants. Here's my keys and here's my wallet. But anyway, yeah, that's exactly why I wear it, and I never have to think about any of that shit. All right, my friends. So these are amazing items so far. And let's see what else I have here. I don't think there's anything really here worth mentioning. I do have this coat, this Dickies coat. This is not going to be hipster attire. This is my favorite coat that I wear. This is not going to be something a hipster would wear, right, Grant?
I mean, when we met, you were dressed like a guy at a show, I think you seem to dress fine. I think the chain, I wouldn't do that. You're going to rule some people out with the chain, but it's also, it's not a disaster.
All right, thanks. Check this out, this coat. Anyway.
Can we talk about basketball shorts?
Well, these are home shorts, Grant. I don't wear this outside.
See, the commitment is that you shouldn't even own that. You're always on.
This is interesting. Yeah, it's once you get infected with that mediocrity, right? What do you wear at home, Grant?
Okay, so I'm wearing black jeans, and I made an aesthetic rule for myself in college. I would not wear I wouldn't wear shorts. I wouldn't wear blue jeans, and I wouldn't wear tennis shoes. And of those rules, I still don't ever wear blue jeans. And it's just the way I was trying to.
Do you literally wear jeans at home?
Yeah, what should I wear?
I don't think, Mr. Robbins, nobody wears jeans at home. Like literally, I'm just gonna walk around the house and put on jeans.
Well, this is interesting.
It's a little too tight, but
Grant brought up the thing about wearing
paint on it. But even by myself at home, I don't want to wear it somehow. So I wear this tight one that looks tight.
No, what were you saying, Mr. Robbins?
Well, it was interesting when Grant mentioned that he vowed not to wear jeans. I've not owned a pair of jeans for probably 15 years.
You just wear sweatpants, right?
I've stuck to that commitment. I wear sweatpants at home. Actually, now that you're bringing up the Dickies thing, I bought 4 pairs of just the most basic Dickies work pants at Walmart 4 months ago. So I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to wear one pair of these every day to work, so I don't really have to think about anything.
Yeah.
So I'm rocking the Dickies every day.
Now, how does that sound to you, Grant?
I have been haunted by people saying that you can be nose blind to yourself. I'm just gonna put that out.
Mm-hmm.
So same pants every day.
Well, not the exact same pair. Not the exact same pair. I've got four separate pairs.
Oh, I think that's rad.
Yeah.
To wear the I own the identical version of certain things.
Yeah, I've got two a black, a gray, and 2 khaki. So I just wear a new one every day.
That's fine. I have the exact same type of chinos that I wear to work in different colors, slightly different colors, but it's the same cut, same type.
I do wear the same pants every day for a week.
You don't wear the same underwear every day, I hope.
No. I am an animal, but I know where my wallet is. Okay, so what else do we have here on our agenda now? Now, Mr. Robbins, there is something aside from pants. You also shop for other items, and it is one item specifically that really kind of will open up maybe an entry into your soul. Although I don't know if that's a good thing, considering maybe there's just Lena Dunham and rat traps in there. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But let's see. All right, so explain this, Mr. Robbins.
Well, I purchased that, and I think it was last year, for the lady I was dating. But being the cheapskate that I am, I purchased it like several days after Valentine's Day because I never would have paid full price. Mm-hmm. So I got it at like a 70% discount with the plan on giving it to her this year. And we've since split quite a few months ago. So yeah, I'm stuck with this sad reminder of what used to be between she and I.
Of your very stingy Protestant affection.
Now, of course, it never would have come out that had she received this gift that I had purchased it at a 70% discount.
From a year, you're like a fucking Saint Valentine's fucking unromantic squirrel who like buries like bears from last year to give them.
God, his face is perfect. It's sad, but it's like has a smile frozen on his face in a 1,000-yard stare. And it's slumped.
Yes, it's the pathos bear. The pathos panda.
All right. Well, okay. Well, Mr. Robbins, why didn't you spend more on a gift? Like, what did you give her that year? I mean, it seems like St. Valentine's Day should be a day of abandon of love, a festival of love, where money shouldn't matter.
Well, that year, I'm sure I gave her a lot of candy, probably flowers, maybe jewelry. These things get all kind of mixed up, you know, between birthdays and Christmas and Valentine's Day. It's just sort of overwhelming. I try to spread this thing to the ladies that I know. It's like, you know, just tell your guys what you want. Don't make it a hassle. You know, I'm doing my little bit part, I feel, for us guys, but
all right. Well, I mean, I think that that's the whole point. It's like we were talking, Mr. Robbins, about synchronicity before, and you know that's the point, is to highlight how much you understand her, how much you have, you know, put your ear to the ground, fucking Robbins, exactly. And it took her essence, and now you can generate it in a form of material fucking gift. And that fucking bear, I'm not sure that's it. Maybe she secretly discovered this bear, Mr. Robbins, and left you, anticipating where its destination was.
Well, I kept it as close a secret as I could. And it's interesting, you know, I was talking to a young lady that I work with and this past week, and she said,
Wait, where did you keep it? It looks big, like in your trunk?
Yeah, it's in one of my spare rooms. Okay. So it's a constant reminder every time I go in there of the love that I've lost. So anyway, I was talking to this young gal at work, and she was saying she had high expectations from her boyfriend for Valentine's Day. And sort of jokingly, I'm like, you know, word of advice, if you don't want to be disappointed, you know, if not explicitly telling him what you want, at least hint at it so hard that there's really not much question what you would want or you would expect. And she said, yeah, the problem is that I could probably say something today, but then what I would want tomorrow might be something totally different. And I thought, man, that puts all of us in a pretty rough spot.
That's how they are, Robbins. They're very ditzy. No, I'm just joking, of course. My friends, this is seems like to me now I've never celebrated Valentine's Day, and this one went by as all of them do. But Grant, you motherfucker, live a normal life. So what is the essence of Valentine for you? It's not just about fucking giving a gift in a manner of a vending machine, right? It is about giving the essence. So do you have a story maybe where you gave the perfect gift to a girl, or something along those lines where you really fucking nailed this holiday?
I snatched victory from the jaws of defeat this year. I'll tell you about that. But I started by managing expectations. You know, she's in her last semester of grad school, super busy. We have the kid, etc. So, you know, I was just like, you know, I just don't, for a week, I don't think I'm going to be able to do anything this year. I don't know what I'm going to get. I haven't gotten you anything yet, just so you know. Setting the expectation, and that in itself, see, if you can together be like outside of Valentine's Day, and then you watch Frasier or something together, which we do, that would be nice. But she really helped me on that, because she happened to be downtown Columbus near my work, and she texted me in the morning of Valentine's. I really didn't have anything planned. I was gonna just like, you know, make it work. But she texted me if I wanted to get lunch. So I got lunch, and I left a bit early and brought flowers, these roses, to lunch. And then I thought, let's go to this place that's near where I work that happens to be the first place we ever went to lunch when we moved to Columbus.
Uh-huh.
And we haven't been back since. It's not even that nice of a place. So then, because I framed it around that, I got away with not even going to that nice of a place for lunch.
Uh-huh. This is what kind of, well, this is a fucking married guy stories. Of course, she has nowhere else to go, but would your lady be, did she voice any objection? Like, fucking, I thought Mr. fucking Robbins with his fucking bear, at least fucking Robbins bothered to buy a discount bear, and you're just bragging that you didn't do shit. She, she wasn't disappointed with this.
Well, we had the lunch and we had the flowers, and it felt like I had my eyes wide open throughout Valentine's Day for any chance to improvise and pull victory from the jaws of defeat. So I would have maybe stopped somewhere during my lunch break.
Well, I can make you a deal on the Pathos Panda for next year.
Please.
Yeah. Yeah, you should.
I think she's upstairs right now watching this stream, so she'll have forgotten about it, and then, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, Mr. Robbins, I think you should fucking sell the bear to Grant. I mean, you should. And it sounds like you got it for cheap, and maybe you can up the price for Grant. Do a little commerce. You could be like, we could have a business of like last minute Valentine's gifts where we would drive around in my van, and Mr. Robbins would have like bears, like different things he got a discount, and then like we can sell them out of the back of my van.
Yeah, we can think about that for next year. I mean, now's a really great time. Kroger, everything's 70% off. So I could load up on a bunch of stuff, throw it back in the room with the bear, and then, a week before Valentine's next year,
I actually wanted
cruise around a cargo van.
Yeah, I actually wanted to buy a big bear like that, because because like when I do videos from my bed, when I'm kind of exhausted and lethargic, a bear would provide a nice kind of a visual there next to me. So I actually was thinking about like a bear of this size, but I don't know if I want this bear. Somehow it's been already kind of sprinkled with the water of defeat or something, Mr. Robbins. You have polluted the bear.
Yeah, it's got a defeat stigma to it.
Yeah.
We actually
yeah,
have
that bear is like a broken Vietnam War veteran. That's what it looks like.
we have a shitty basement bathroom that we're trying to make be creepy. So it has like a creepy clown painting in it. So I think we could put that in there. That would work well there.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. All right. So I guess we'll move on to Grant has been telling us some choice tips about Valentine's Day. Now, I actually thought that it was all a part of a clever schema to then exceed expectations. But I guess Grant just lowered them for the sake of lowering them. And there was no real plan outside of this. But however, he did for some reason provide me with a lot of advice when it comes to the ladies. And I don't know how this came about, but we were having an email correspondence, and Grant said that you had some period in your life when you were really looking to connect with women, like reorganize, create a new strategy for engaging with the beautiful sex. Is this correct, Grant?
Yes. I mean, it was the watching your episode on Sargon, giving his, unimaginative and stilted advice. And I do think it's something important. I've thought about it a lot. I really think that people should, that it's a kind of a crucial skill to have. Like your life partner, you shouldn't leave it to chance. So therefore you have to actually have the ability to consciously meet a girl.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Exactly. You don't want to leisurely like stumble into it. So this list is pretty expansive. So we're not necessarily going to spend a lot of time on every point.
Sure.
I mean, this is an amazing document here, and but we will kind of briefly glance at every point. So the first one here, Grant, is you're inviting her into your world. Now, can you elaborate on that? Do you even remember what it says? I can read it here.
Oh, I do. That basically is my rephrasing. Do you want to come in the frame? Is it? That's my phrasing of the, you don't make a girl, or even the idea that you have to meet a girl the center of your life, get momentum going on your own. So that is related to things that you care about. Which, I mean,
don't try
essence of it. Really.
Don't try to break into her world, right? Don't be like desperate and thirsty for her world.
Don't break into her home.
Yeah. This is, it kind of, it has to do with my book on dating that's coming out. Consent is the name of the game. It's not something I realized, frankly. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
All right. So let's,
you can critique these, because I think both of you, please. I think you guys have a good take on the human condition. So I wrote these really quickly, but these are all things that I like, my own folk wisdom that I find myself saying all the time.
Yes, Mr. Robbins. I guess the problem for me is that like you're inviting her into your world. I don't fucking want to live in my world, let alone subject anybody else to this horrible suffering of living in this world. So that's kind of a challenging one for me, but I know what you mean. Mr. Robbins, how's your world? Are you ready to invite ladies into it, or do we really, you and I, have to hide it from women? Is that like hide your world should be the advice for us?
I mean, I share with you, part of what goes on in my world away from work. Last weekend, for example, it was big girl burlesque. This week, my choice was an hour's worth of pinball, and next week it will be professional wrestling at the VFW. So I've created a world. I just don't know how appealing that world would be to much of anyone else.
Yeah, there is no denial. Well, and no denying that you have a world, Mr. Robbins, but that question is key. Okay, okay, Grant, the next one is very tender, very soft. Kiss her like you mean it.
So that comes from my father. He's really not one to, go on about when he dated or anything. But so that's one of the few specific pieces of advice he's given. And what's behind that is that if you find you can't kiss her like you mean it, then you're not into her enough, and that's a problem. So it's a good test.
But what about like a crazy kiss of like desperation? Like a kiss could be a gauge of your own unhinged nature.
Yeah, it depends on what you mean by it, right?
Yeah. So kiss her like you mean it when you're mentally stable and medicated, if that's the issue, right? You have to find a place of stability when you're settled down, when you're calm. And then do you kiss her? It's like a gauge, right? You kiss her like
it doesn't have to be a stable kiss.
Okay. But an unstable kiss would just validate your insanity in relation to this person. No?
Or arguably your passion.
Yeah. It's okay to bring your own issues and transmute that a little bit into the generally passionate energy of the night or the date. It doesn't have to all be for her or about her. It's this crazy world you're in together.
Okay. Well, my advice is still to be medicated and to do kind of first take
that's my advice too.
Yeah. Take Thorazine and then see if you kiss her like you mean it, like if you have that passion for the kiss. Let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of look around here. Navigate an environment in which you can thrive.
That I have. So I went to a prep school in Seattle. It was like modeled after Exeter. I was in the same core of 35 students from 5th grade to 12th grade. I did not date during all of that meaningfully, really. Like maybe a little bit at the end of senior year. I didn't have sex. Then I sort of no. Then I went to college.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
I didn't like have a plan. This is not like then I decided to learn game. No, I just went to college and I met a girl during orientation week, and I lost my virginity, and then we ended up dating for over a year, and we did have things in common, and it just I was appreciated in the environment of basically this art school, liberal arts college, where I was. And there I was finally able to meet bandmates and start a band, and then the things ebbed back in a worse direction. Afterwards, I started going to business school I did a year of an MBA, which was not right for me. And like I took a girl on a date from there, and no chemistry. She was in the HVAC business, and golfed, and I don't golf, and just generally, it's just so much easier if you're where you should be in life. And that's a very intuitive thing. But if you're not meeting the right girls, that's a good sign that you're probably not.
Yeah. The funny thing about it is that like the whole chat right now is talking about Kavanaugh. Like ever since Kavanaugh came up, like it's just kind of like a huge chat about Kavanaugh.
Yeah, I've noticed that. That's been like the last hour.
Yeah. Well, whatever. We're talking about eternal things here. I don't fucking give a shit about this fucking chat and fucking Kavanaugh. This is not romance, what Kavanaugh did, allegedly. All right. So I guess like for me, navigating an environment in which you can thrive, I think you're right. I've made a mistake of hanging out at the mall by the food court, just, kind of strutting around.
Shredding.
You know, dropping a few choice words to the young honeys. Did it hurt when you fell from heaven? Stuff like that. So much more work to be done on this front. Okay, so this one is rather provocative, Grant. Woman likes sex too.
Oh, yeah. That basic framework, sometimes the way that it's like talked about on some of these, like just blogs and things that tend towards the incel mindset, it's like it's this whole foreign thing you have to talk women into as if they don't get horny as well. And it's just good to remember that they do, and that they will even do they will even put you on the first date.
Yeah.
Or
Well, Mr. Robbins has actually told me that in a long-term relationship you can only cuddle your way into sex, and that for a woman it's just an extension of cuddling, really.
No.
Why did you say that, Mr. Robbins?
I don't recall that.
No, I just made it up. But what are your opinions
on how women liking sex?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no different than us, but well,
different. I'm not trying to say it's
different, but
in the same way men are.
Right, and it's just at some point, I've always found that kind of there's an excitement, a real excitement to the novelty, but after a while, it just seems like that novelty in both cases seems to wear off.
Yeah.
And that's kind of can be a hard one to deal with.
I mean, I think that women's this is maybe sexist. It's just my subjective opinion based on nothing. I think that women are way more complicated when it comes to sex, and it's like somebody said that it's like a Boeing plane for women's sex drive versus like a male, like a light switch. And they're like a lot of things have to be aligned.
Oh yeah, I mean you can't, like, you shouldn't ever be like, I'm definitely, even in a relationship, any stage, married, but even early on dating, you shouldn't ever be like, I'm definitely gonna have sex tonight. You should not be entitled to it.
Oh yeah, but I think that it's kind
of a long game. I think about 2 days from now, it's fine. Whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's
set yourself up for 2 days from now.
Yeah, exactly. Set yourself up and prepare. I mean, sooner or later. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's. I mean, I do think in some ways that is an extension of cuddling, to be honest, because a lot of men can't realistically like please their woman. Aside from that, kind of creating that emotional foundation for, Congress, though this is a very crude generalization, but that's what streams are supposed to be about crude opinions and fucking discussing fucking Kavanaugh forever. When is this going to be enough already? Anyway, let's see.
I would just say define emotion, because there definitely has to be an emotional connection, but
I think that men enjoy sex without emotion more than women, but it's less fulfilling, generally speaking.
But there's always emotion in life.
I don't know that there's always emotion in life. I mean, not in that sense that I'm talking about. I mean,
it could have to be like like Hallmark, happy ending. I don't know, or 50 Shades of Grey. Some, I don't know.
Okay, so what about this one? Masculine feminine polarity is real.
Yes, this is controversial, but I do. So I don't know, when I used to not work out at all, and then when I decided to start doing it, I remember having this thought that if I got strong, would I be intimidating, to but I noticed that women seem to feel safer around me. And I was like, oh, like that's a polarity thing happening.
Once you start working out?
Yeah, like being stronger resulted not in like, oh, this guy's gonna like is dangerous. It's like, oh, it's actually a safe thing. And I do think that a lot of women there's some kind of peer pressure. It depends on the circles that they're in. But there's peer pressure to not be able to say that you want kids, or traditionally, feminine aspects of the life path. And it's good to just let her know that you're okay with that, so that it's a safe space, if you will. I'm not talking about like making someone more feminine, but just letting them be comfortable in their natural.
Yeah, I mean, realistically speaking, like male-female polarity is real, but it's kind of like in kind of our overall milieu, it's like taboo to kind of talk about it. So I mean, I guess you make conclusions on your own, and then like say sexist things to your friends. I'm just joking around.
Well,
All right.
I do think men and women both contain masculine and feminine energy, so I'm not like, that's an important thing. And if you can't recognize the feminine energy within you, then you don't even know what you're talking about.
Listen, I have a chain wallet. I have no feminine energy whatsoever. Let's see. I guess we'll conclude with this one. See the best in people.
Something I learned as a substitute teacher in teaching guitar, private lessons, like you can't not like a student. The whole framework of that is so healthy, because it's all about helping the person reach a better version at the task, or that they're from where they are. And to a major degree, you can bring that mentality into any relationship. And like focus on the positive in the person, the stuff you genuinely like about them, and nurture that. It's like the opposite of being a nagging partner, or
just kind of release the tension of the whole thing. Just kind of release the tension, not let aggression build up, right? Mr. Robbins, you've been quiet there. Are you following the Kavanaugh hearings in the chat, or
no? I'm processing the whole thing and trying to compare it to my experiences and people I know. Like for example, when you're saying see the best in people, and I agree to try to do that, but at the same time, and maybe this is my inherent cynicism, and maybe I lean too far in this direction, is that I think you do have to be sort of realistic and analytical going into those things. And I found, like the other day I was talking to a girl, she's like 22, 23. And for whatever reason, she decided to open up a fair amount about her personal life. And she was talking about her sisters and her parents and her relationships with them and her relationships with her boyfriend, who she's been involved with for like 4 years. And she's not really getting a strong signal from him that he's ready to settle down or commit. But she realizes that it's a really, really important thing within her to have children. And it's like, yeah, at some point, I mean, that's got to be addressed between the two of you, and the longer you kind of hang out in this limbo of not knowing, the more time you're wasting when you could be moving on. So there's that thing of seeing the best seeing the best in people, but I don't know. I'm super.
I guess with that, I'm really thinking about that, like early. It's like when you start dating someone, it even could be in the course of the initial conversation with them. It's like a plane taking off in turbulence, and you have not established trust yet. So I'm actually sort of talking about bridging that leap of faith with trust, you know? So like if they don't text you back for a day, don't assume that they're playing games, you know? That just even that small stuff.
Kind of release the tension of it, but be realistic, right? Not that's kind of the idea. And
Huge pet peeve. I mean, I think that's unethical to date someone while she loses the ability to have children and then break up with her just because of your own indecision. I mean,
Yeah, we actually brought that up, and it was a weird conversation to be having with someone who I've only known for like a day. But at the same time, I tried to look at it from or try to understand it from the perspective of her boyfriend. And let's say he's only 22 or 23. He's still kind of working out through what he is. You know, he's got a lot of growth to go through. And, you know, he's probably not sure where he plans on going with his life. So, you know,
I think he should. If she's 10 plus years older than him,
pardon me.
Let's say she's 10 plus years older. I think he should break up with her. When I was 25, I dated someone who's 32, and I knew it wasn't going anywhere. And I actually broke up with her because I didn't want to occupy the year of like 22 or 32 to 33. Did I say she was 22? She was 32. So I've actually done that, and I feel good about that. She didn't end up meeting someone and having kids, but that was at least not on me.
Yeah, I agree. It's totally unethical to string somebody along, but I think in their position, they're both like 22, 23, and she has a fairly good idea of what she wants, and he's still kind of, you know, feeling himself out. So maybe it's more on her to make the call.
They've both got time. I mean, it comes down to the biological clock.
Yeah.
So that's fine. I don't know.
All right. And the last topic we're going to cover is, well, these are actually pretty good advices, and maybe, I don't know, you should do a Peterson thing and, you know, come up with like a brand animal, like a chipmunk or something. But no, but these are actually good advices, and maybe you want to publish them in full somewhere. Okay, and well, I don't know, like on a website or something. Yeah. All right, and the last thing we're going to talk about is the conspiracy of the suburbs. That's the provocative theory Grant has about why the urban design of America is so fucking shitty. Why are we surrounded by boxes of mediocrity? What is going on here? Grant, give us an executive summary.
Okay. Totally different topic, but happy to share this theory. So I studied urban planning, I have a master's in it, and I work for a construction firm that builds affordable multifamily housing. That's kind of the background. And I think that I'll start with this provocative take. I think a lot of the political energy that is put into the grand Godzilla scale drama of national politics would be better applied locally and specifically to the issue of land use. And it's especially now a good time now because that is what urban planning, that's a big thread in urban planning as a field, is the idea of representation and democracy and listening to people so you can have an outsized influence. And I do think that the design of our built environment affects our mentalities and our way of life to a huge way. So, you know, I share the pretty commonly accepted thesis, especially if anyone left of center, that the post World War II suburban cul-de-sac landscape, you know, growing into McMansions and exurbia, where you have an hour-long commute over the freeways, the homogenization of America, the auto dependency, the lack of walkability, the way it isolates households, that is all bad. But I do think that sort of the way we talk about it now, we underemphasize the ability to transform what the suburbs are. Like, that has been seeded. There's this huge blind spot. almost as if there's a conspiracy, culturally speaking, of aligned interests to keep the conversation away from changing what the suburbs are, because nothing can be done with land. So it's always talking about we're going to rebuild what we're going to do in this urban core, but just leave the suburbs alone, because there is a conspiracy to make housing prices keep going up and up. The interests of municipalities need that because it increases property tax revenue. Homeowners who vote more and or more less transient, so they are like turbo constituents. They want it, of course, and relatively speaking, those who are renting don't have as much of a political voice. And developers are happy with it because it's, if anything, if nothing else. So what I'm talking about are pretty basic principles, generally in the school of thought of new urbanism, which actually is from the 80s. But the idea that what the suburbs can, there's no reason why you can't have a corner store. It doesn't have to be so monotonous. There's no reason why you can't have an apartment building in amongst single family homes and a little bit more variety of land use. And so,
do the suburbs just reflect the desire of the people that American dream is isolation, is living away from others in a plot of land? That there is a kind of a desire for this stuff. Like if they wanted to build a bus stop here where I live, I'm sure there'd be a lot of grumbling about it, to say the least. That this is what people want. This is what the American consumer wants: is isolation, is castle, is a kind of a sanitized existence where you're a master of your alienated domain.
The idea of the suburbs is, the more I read about, urban civic history, urban planning history, is actually, I think, a genuinely romantic one of wedding the best of the country and the best of the city, the amenities of the city, and even, imagine this, some of the culture of the city. But yes, having more space. And that emerged in the late 19th century. And these are what you call streetcar suburbs. So now they'd be inner ring suburbs, or you call them pre-war suburbs based around a whole different type of transportation. And they tend to have a strip of stores nearby. You can go to a few, several restaurants, and the houses are a little bit closer together, and you don't need to get on the freeway. And when you see what an almost accident of history it was, it has to do with the fact we're such a young country. So talk about seeing the best in things. Americans vacation to Europe, and to look at how people in Europe live in European beautiful cities. But Europe has had so much more time than we've had. So I think we should be patient about our ability to refine our living situation. But we happen to have this technological boom at the same time as all this wealth. Well, we're still exploding in population and covering this continent still practically in the course of the 20th century. So a lot of it was just thrown up really fast. But there's going to be something called infill development happening more and more, which is a lot of these houses are being shitty. So you actually have to make a decision. Maybe we're going to build something new amongst the suburbs, bulldoze this one block. And that will inevitably happen. And I think that will start to bring some of that refinement. And I think there should be more, apartment buildings. It shouldn't be like a tower, but something somewhat proportionate mixed in, for example, because the suburbs become an engine, as they are now, to stratify class in America. And I don't know
what people want. I mean,
well, exactly. Okay, people want it, but I do, but it's just too unattainable. It's like it really is a struck. I don't think of politics primarily in terms of class, but you have to use the word class to describe the vastly different life outcome that happens if somebody can afford the down payment on a home and they get in their foot in the door versus somebody who can't. And it leads to now people just live. What happens is people live further and further away and they get the suburban experience, but it's on like, it's in what was rural land. And it's because it's weirdly off limits to revise what suburbia is. I mean, things are actually tilting a little in the right direction. Like there was looking at basically they're building a new development in in Dublin. Delaware, north of Columbus. I was reading about today. So it's a whole tract. It's not the right way to do it in a lot of ways, but they're smaller lots, therefore more affordable, and that's because that's what millennials want more, because millennials don't have kids as much. So, I feel like I'm rambling, but the point is that it's something that should be talked about politically.
Well, there's a kind of a momentum around a certain way of living, a certain idea of success. It kind of reminds me of like a lot of people not having kids because their idea of a nuclear family is one that has to live in a suburban house. And so it's just kind of ingrained itself into the American psyche, and there are financial interests benefiting from that as well, from that momentum. But I mean, I personally don't hate the suburbs. I don't want to live here, but I'm antisocial and I kind of like it, but for the same reason I don't. I did prefer living in Seattle in Columbus, where there is more of a pedestrian culture, especially in Seattle. Mr. Robbins, what are your thoughts? Do you want to live, I don't know, in a huge exorbitant house? Where are you going to take your teddy bear?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm probably definitely a suburb guy now, and it's not that I really like living out here that much. The lifestyle out here is much. I lived a good 15 to 20 years in the city in Cincinnati, real close to the university. So it wasn't downtown, but it was still definitely a city experience. And
I lived there as well.
I love the cultural diversity. I loved having, being able to go to ball games and plays and the symphony and art house theaters and all that stuff within a 5 or 10 minute drive. Out here, you get none of that. But just in terms of like investment, I got more of a house out here than I could have in the city.
You can store your plush toys, discount toys.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, it definitely compromises kind of your cultural experience. But then I found, as I was getting a little bit older, that stuff became less and less important. I was going out to fewer concerts and fewer plays and things like that. So
you wanted a place of solitude. You wanted your own kind of a castle.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that would be like really, really awesome to have like plenty of your own space and your own yard, as compared to living in a shitty apartment in the city with really shitty neighbors either above or below. But then it's all a compromise. You move out here and, that house has expenses that an apartment didn't. Yeah, and it's quieter generally living out here, which is kind of cool, but there's just nothing going on.
Yeah, would you mind if there was basically a town square that existed a 5-minute bike ride away?
Yeah, I mean, if something like that could be pulled off, I don't know, what sort of cultural shift that would require to make that.
Well, that's the thing with it's not even a cultural shift. I really believe it's like a legal shift that occurs in the legal's realm of urban planning, which is why I think non-professionals should start looking into urban planning, because it's actually pretty. All it has to do with the laws, zoning laws, about setback, about how many parking spaces you need, about the density of building compared to the size of the lot, how many, whether you can have any multifamily within, it could be a massive stretch of no multifamily. Just a little bit of that variety.
Yeah.
But it's actually illegal to do now. So I don't think it's true that like nobody wants it or that the marketplace would change anything.
It's like there's a whole dimension of our existence that is being overlooked as we're maybe arguing about Kavanaugh, for example, endlessly. Something like that.
Yeah, without knowing anything at all about the subject, if what you may be saying is that there are ways of designing communities in order to more or less facilitate more interaction or something like that out in the suburbs, yeah, that
there's a conspiracy of gay frogs that wants you to live in a soulless shithole, Robbins. That's what's up. That's what I got out of Grant's presentation. But no, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, like when I go to Russia, because everything has been designed around pedestrians and public transit, because you couldn't hardly get a car in the Soviet Union. I mean, you could, but most people relied on walking. And so you go even in like small town and you have a nice town square and you have places where people are walking around. And in that sense, you feel much more connected to human beings. Even if you don't interact with them, you still see them and you can people watch for young honeys of legal age. And there is a kind of that dimension is missing from American life for many people. And in a sense, it is kind of terrifying if you think about it, to just kind of transport into your spaceship from one place to another. And it also fucks poor people who can't afford a car and have to rely on shitty public transit.
Yeah, and there seems to be like kind of a give and take to, because I come from a very small town, and I still go back, and I sense that out there, because it is so small, that there probably is a higher degree of a sense of community in a place like that, which is kind of like, arguably a major plus. But the downside of that, and it affects different people different ways, I'm sure, but those little towns like that are being so decimated that, even to go back and visit, there's kind of an overwhelming sense of this just being something that's dying. And to just live there every day knowing that you're in a place that's not making, the opposite of making headway, seems to be a big downside to that. So
I don't know. I mean, like I've driven through a lot of like small towns, like Greenville and Bethel. Well, Greenville's like in Ohio, and I think that it's kind of impressive. Their streets, like I don't see any like desolation there. I mean, seems to be not many vacant lots, vacant stores, if any, and they seem to be doing fine. The ones I've been to, but who knows? All right, my friends. Well, I do have to unfortunately work tomorrow, and I have a shitty training day with Bob, and I'll have to spend like 8 hours driving around with this guy, and it's just going to be a time of misery. So we'll have to cut the stream at this point, but it's been going on for some time. So thank you, Grant. Thank you, Robbins. Any final thoughts, guys?
I would recommend the book. It's an accessible but with a lot of data in it book called Happy City by Charles Montgomery. It speaks to that whole phenomenon of there is a lot of research on if people are happier when they have casual encounters with pedestrians, and it really connects the design of a city to the human experience.
Yeah, I mean, it is really a dimension of
Thank you for
a dimension of life that's missing from America in most places, and I mean, it is kind of horrifying, and it is a serious issue. Mr. Robbins, any thoughts from you? Maybe the bear has something to say.
No, I'm just looking forward with you moving forward with the Black Canadian Squirrel Group. I'm proud to be a member,
Yeah.
and hopefully everybody else will join us in this new adventure.
Yeah, Black Canadian Squirrel. It's kind of a lengthy, name, but people need to show commitment to the channel. So I did include the links to Mr. Robbins's blog and Grant's YouTube channel. So check those out. Support the channel if you like. Thank you guys for watching, and have a good week.
You too.